The video games your child plays online could put them in touch with drug smugglers. Homeland Security agents and Border Patrol say drug cartels are using the games to recruit people to bring drugs across the border.
There are as many cartel recruitment methods as you can imagine. Criminal organizations have to come up with fresh ideas every year, as authorities are monitoring their moves and learning their old ways. The latest news? Mexican cartels are recruiting U.S. teens to smuggle narcotics and even migrants into the country.
Migrants are being told things that just aren't true, that the crossing is easy, that it's safe, that they won't get caught.
It's a never-ending game of lies, manipulation, and violence, and the latest victims are U.S. teens who believe their lies. How long has this been going on for? And is anything being done about this? Let's explore the case of cartel teens smuggling migrants into the States. It's not news that cartels target children and young teens for recruitment.
¿Cuáles son sus nombres?
Eric y Manuel.
Eric y Manuel. ¿De dónde son originarios?
De Reynosa, Tamaulipas.
¿Qué piensan hacer?
Vamos a hacer del cartel del Golfo.
El cartel del Golfo. ¿No quieres estudiar tú, joven?
No, eso ya es para niños chiquitos.
¿No te importa el estudio?
No, nada.
To little boys, cartels seem cool. Through songs, merch, and word of mouth, cartels promote the idea that you can have status, money, and respect if you join them. The people they target are usually boys from impoverished, sometimes addiction-riddled environments, so cartels seem like the only way out for them. Except that's a lie. Once you're in, you have to do unspeakable things to prove yourself. You become worse than your environment. A monster, desensitized to violence, willing to do anything for your even more violent boss. And yeah, sometimes the kids are recruited from the States too.
I was going on 13 years old the first time I took a life. It's just one day, got invited to Mexico. I didn't know what was going on at first. And I see about 6 people kneeling down. Then the individual, the person in charge, they start laughing, and I think they saw that scared, panicked look in my face and asked me if I had ever killed somebody.
The cartels imbue their young recruits with 24/7 fear and a sense of kill or be killed. If you want to look powerful and have the cartel's respect, you will have to maim and take lives for them. If you can't do it, you might end up like your dead enemies.
Ya estando ahí, llegó una persona que estábamos ahí por primera vez y nos dijo, bueno, ya están aquí, el que se quiere ir que se vaya ahorita. Y corto cartucho con la pistola. Aquí la única forma que te vayas es por las patas por delante.
I've done the simple stuff that everybody starts doing. Teeth out, cut fingers up slowly, or...
And the final initiation ritual is always murder.
He pulled out a handgun, told me to kill that person, the one kneeling in front of him. And I just shot him. And he said he was putting me on his payroll.
Sadly, recruiting children is just good for business in the eyes of cartel leaders. It's much easier to convince a vulnerable teen desperate to escape his unfortunate condition than an adult who might already know the risks associated with being a sicario or a smuggler. When a 14-year-old boy named Edgar Jimenez Lugo was arrested, the news went viral.
¿Cómo te llamas?
Edgar Jimenez Lugo.
¿Cuántos años tienes?
14.
14. ¿Dónde te tuvieron? ¿Dónde te agarraron?
En el aeropuerto.
¿A dónde ibas?
¿A dónde ibas?
A San Diego.
¿Con quién ibas?
Con mi hermana.
Edgar seemed confused, a little scared, and by all means, innocent. He was young enough to not realize it was not in his best interest to give a full confession to a journalist. But before he was even taken to the station that night, he'd confessed to removing people's heads since he was 11.
¿A los cuántos años empezaste aquí?
Los 11.
¿Tú eres el que sales en el video golpeando a un sujeto que está colgado en una casa?
Sí.
Edgar confessed to being recruited by his sister's boyfriend, who was a small-time cartel boss. Before long, he forced Edgar to prove himself, threatening to take his life if he didn't. He also forced him to take narcotics to help him take lives without a conscience. By the age of 14, Edgar was as far away from a normal, healthy, peaceful teen as he could be. He did not remember a life without cruelty. Sadly, authorities in Mexico arrest teens like Edgar every week, and their stories are just as terrifying. And despite the authorities' efforts to stop the cartels from recruiting children and teens, they keep finding new, more pervasive ways to do so.
Now to the Mexican drug cartels and just how far they are willing to go to get drugs across the southern border, even recruiting our children online.
The video games your child plays online could put them in touch with drug smugglers. Homeland Security agents and Border Patrol say drug cartels are using the games to recruit people to bring drugs across the border.
In 2022, the U.S. was flooded with these headlines. More and more teens were helping Mexican cartels smuggle narcotics and illegal immigrants across the border over false promises of quick cash. The El Paso U.S. Border Patrol Sector Chief Gloria Chavez explained.
Cartels are actively recruiting on social media these young drivers. These are kids. These are American kids, U.S. citizen kids under the age of 18 that are now being recruited through social media to earn $1,000, $2,000, even up to $3,000 over a pickup of a human smuggling load.
These are just some of the images recovered by authorities of cartel employees contacting teens via Instagram, Snapchat, and other social media with quick jobs. Must need a car or a truck. Need 2 to 3 drivers to go through a checkpoint. Got some on Sullivan. Got a group of 10. Cash ready. Yep, they're referring to illegal immigrants waiting to be picked up. And why do the job yourself? Exposing yourself to arrest and prison time when you can manipulate a teen to do it for you. Need drivers. Must have a car or know someone with a car. $3,500 in one drive. Slide up for more info. $3,000 sounds like a big deal for a teen who isn't working or is earning a minimum wage at an unqualified job. Also, teens are not as aware of the consequences of doing something like this. Look how young some of the teens arrested are. They are no more than children. To think cartels prey on children and have been doing so for such a long time.
What are Border Patrol agents doing to keep these kids from getting involved with these cartels, and why are they? Is it about the money?
This is a really troubling trend for law enforcement and also for Customs and Border Protection right here in El Paso.
Reportedly, the COVID-19 pandemic also had a role to play in this shift towards social media and U.S. teens.
Some of the non-essential restrictions on travel here during the coronavirus pandemic have sort of prohibited some Mexican nationals from crossing over the border as easily, and so some of the cartels now are outsourcing some of that work.
Indeed, Mexican cartels tend to rely on Mexican nationals for smuggling jobs. As many Mexican nationals live in the U.S., they can do the cartel's work there, smuggling or selling, then return to Mexico with the profits. Plus, when it comes to teens, it's easier to further your cartel propaganda to locals. Merch and music glorifying drug lords don't make it that far past the border. By the way, if you're curious about that music, the genre is called narco corrido, and its songs almost always present drug lords as fun heroes or cool, brave, ruthless leaders. The lyrics also present women as properties, just like the money, luxury watches, or fast cars men could earn by being drug lords. Yeah, it's wrong on so many levels, and yet it appeals to many young boys in the country, and some songs have even made it on the Billboard Hot 100 in 2023, such as 1% by Grupo Frontera, featuring Bad Bunny. So perhaps cartel's influence on US teens is not that weak anymore. Just like they have been doing in Mexico for so long, cartels target teens from vulnerable backgrounds, prone to dreaming big and not knowing the reality of their brutal world. But as US authorities know this, they use their force to raise awareness in these communities and make sure these kids won't be easy targets on social media.
And they're also targeting vulnerable communities with education, with messaging, to try to prevent kids from joining up here. And one of those initiatives, it's called the Se Busca initiative. It means looking for information. They're going to be going after some of the top 10 criminals here on the U.S.-Mexico border.
Communities living in the border area were thus notified of the 10 most wanted criminals working for cartels and operating in the area. That way, they increased their odds of arresting them, and they also raised awareness around their criminal activities. If any teen came in contact with them, They knew what they wanted, and they were urged to phone authorities if that happened.
American teenagers and their parents, should be warned about these individuals.
The latest cartel target, Mexico's military. The Jalisco New Generation Cartel took the fight to the next level, shooting down a military helicopter with a rocket-propelled grenade.
This is the level of technology Mexican cartels have at the moment. Powerful cartels, like the Sinaloa or the CJNG, have the means to buy military weaponry, tanks, grenades, and drones.
¿Un dron o qué? Ese mero. ¿Dónde está el dron? Está volando derecho arriba. Hay un dron.
The Mexican military itself is afraid of cartels. Attacks can happen from above, like in any devastating war, at any given minute. At the end of 2022, The Guardian reported 26,000 murders in Mexico. The last few years have been record-setting in terms of homicides. In 2021, there were 94 homicides per day. Violence is at an all-time high, and the Sinaloa and CJNG are behind most of it. They fight each other, authorities, and civilians who refuse to pay protection taxes. Drones also allow cartels to supervise the border and plan their smuggling activities when the guards aren't looking.
They do have that type of intelligence, and they are watching Border Patrol officials here to know when to traffic both drugs and migrants over the border. And so, CBP looking to get, that artificial intelligence, counter-drone technology. This region does expect to get about a dozen more autonomous towers by the end of the year to help oversee its 264 miles of border.
Between 2021 and 2024, security around the Texas border was strongly increased, and authorities are still working to prevent more teens from joining the cartels down south. But in 2023, another teen recruitment method was reported.
According to a bombshell report in the Daily Caller, smugglers are reportedly luring young video gamers to scout the U.S.-Mexico border. And they are messaging players who are online at times that their parents are likely not around, offering them money to spy on law enforcement, and then let those cartel bosses know if the coast is clear to cross.
Yeah, if smuggling narcotics or people across the border became more dangerous, the cartels figured out another way to use innocent teens to their advantage. They would ask them to do a job that sounded even easier. Just go to the border and scout for them. If U.S. authorities were not around, then they could give a green signal and the smuggling could begin.
Or there have been at least 30 reported cases of this happening so far, and that's just what we know about.
One journalist spoke to a boy as young as 13. He'd been recruited months before to do the cartel's dirty business with the promise of quick cash.
This 13-year-old boy was lured in. This was according to Telemundo, and we translated that story. But he was lured in because, like you said, his parents weren't around when the cartels came in and played games with him on video games on his apps. And eventually they became friends and they started talking on WhatsApp. And that's when this offer came to be that they would pay $800 a month for he and his friends to go down to the border on the Mexican side and to look out for law enforcement there.
So the boy had to cross the border with his friends and sit there for hours, exposing themselves to a dozen horrible risks like arrest or getting caught in the crossfire between rival cartels or cartel sicarios and Border Patrol agents. Not only that, but this was just the starting point of their so-called friendship.
And if they did a good job at that, they would also become part of the drug trade issue.
This is the sad reality of cartels. Sometimes they lure children in with simple jobs. It sounds like really easy money, and it's hard to do a bad job at something so easy, right? As the teen gains confidence, the cartel then promises them one step up, more money for more difficult jobs. Soon enough, they start feeling important and powerful. They're only 15 or 13, but look how well they're doing. And they're earning so much compared to other kids their age. Before they know it, they start to take lives for the cartel. And that's a point of no return. But how do you prevent this from happening when cartels have even infiltrated video games?
They're definitely using video games as the tool. They're using different aliases that sound similar to being in the cartel. This was Northeast Cartel in this situation. So they'll use names, but then they'll put symbols in so that they're not blocked on these apps. And they find that kids who are playing these games with guns and that are using violence in the games are the prime targets for this.
Some of these kids are so young that they can't tell the difference between shooting targets in a video game and in real life. For them, it's another sort of game. Young teens' brains are not fully developed. It can be pretty shocking to hear, but the human brain fully develops in the mid to late 20s. Yep, that late. The brain finishes developing and maturing in the mid to late 20s. The part of the brain behind the forehead, called the prefrontal cortex, is one of the last parts to mature. This area is responsible for skills like planning, prioritizing, and making good decisions. So yeah, when you're 30, you're less likely to join a cartel. Here's another reason for it. Changes to the areas of the brain responsible for social processes can lead teens to focus more on peer relationships and social experiences. The emphasis on peer relationships, along with ongoing prefrontal cortex development, might lead teens to take more risks because the social benefits outweigh the possible consequences of a decision. Calculating consequences is one of those parts that develop really late in life. Sometimes, going through a traumatic experience helps make a person more cautious about risks and consequences. Other times, simply becoming more educated and learning to think twice before you act does the trick. All of this is less likely to happen when you're 13. Tragically, cartels know this and they prey on it. And don't think cartels care that crime gets punished more lightly for teens. To criminal organizations, fresh recruits are expendable. They're the first to take the fall. That's exactly why kids are getting sent to the border to do the cartel's work. If they are caught, it's them, not the drug lords several ranks above them, who get arrested.
I talked to a mother, Dora Ortega, whose son in Arizona was lured by the cartels online, on Snapchat actually, to smuggle migrants from the border into metropolitan areas of Arizona.
Although teens rarely understand the consequences of what they're doing, they understand that what they're doing isn't right. So most of them hide their illicit activities from their parents. Some parents figure it out only when they see them flaunting their newly earned money.
She didn't realize her son was doing this. She thought he was just going to work every day until he came home wearing expensive clothes that she knew he couldn't afford working in a warehouse every day.
Authorities don't have an easy job. In many situations like this, it takes years for law enforcement to devise a system against a brand new criminal method. And because many apps, including WhatsApp, are encrypted, it's very hard to crack even a single case. Messages are encoded, apps are encrypted, and very few kids talk to their parents. Catching even one culprit is like looking for a needle in a haystack. Part of the job falls in the purview of the gaming companies. They should track down criminal accounts and block them before they get access to innocent kids playing the same game.
It's a really hard thing to track for many of these companies, and the same thing with apps. That's why the cartels are doing it. They understand a lot of these things. They know our immigration laws. They know when Border Patrol is around, obviously with these scouts now. And they also know how to use these tools to lure kids, to prey on them essentially, just like they do with anything, with the drug trade, with human smuggling, and now with this, to have scouts at the border.
Cartels seem to be one step ahead every single time. Perhaps if they weren't, they would have ended in the 1980s with the Guadalajara cartel. But with every new cartel come new methods, tactics, and targets. Cartels change with the demands of the market.
It's like, okay, so what the U.S. market like? They like their avocados from Mexico and their meth from Mexico.
2 or 3 decades ago, it was pot and white powder that made the bulk of their profits. Today, it's meth, fentanyl, and yeah, even avocados. Many cartels make big bucks from smuggling illegal immigrants across the border, kidnapping for ransom, and a dozen other violent crimes. Immigrants are often smuggled in inhumane conditions, many of them dying before they reach the States. Others die or are injured in confrontations with Border Patrol agents. But again, cartels don't care about this. They already made their money. And if their immigrants make it to the States safely, they are practically cartel slaves. They are threatened into paying big chunks of what they earn to the cartels forever. as a sort of lifelong debt for being taken north of the border. It's hard to see a world where cartels don't win. Even when sicarios get arrested, new ones are recruited, and so many of these are children. It's truly heartbreaking. Let's just hope that authorities can stay on top of their game and work to prevent teens from joining these awful organizations. Hey, thanks for tuning in. What are your thoughts on this situation? Do you know other terrifying cartel news? Let me know in a comment. And before you leave, you know the drill. Like, subscribe, and hit that bell button. All right, see you next time.